Hey everybody, this is Perch. Um, there was a moment in the interview with, well, it wasn't an interview. Sean Murphy and I did this well more than an hour talking about social media. And if you haven't checked that out, please, I strongly recommend it. In fact, it's funny. It's like every week that goes by, everything that's said there is more relevant. It's especially in the last 2 weeks. I don't know if you happen to be on Facebook or Twitter, something went. People lost their minds more. Like about 2 weeks ago, there was a definite shift into just things getting much worse. Of some of the worst takes, most dumbest kind of things. I mean, we're way past like don't tweet that into very very weird territory. But you should go take a look at it. But there was a moment in that discussion that I thought was really clever. It almost got lost in all the other comments about social media and kind of how this is doesn't work. And it was, I'm paraphrasing what Sean said, but basically it was, in order to really succeed in comics, in order to really kind of do well, you almost have to fall out of love with it a bit. You have to kind of bring yourself back a bit from the super kind of fan love that a lot of us have for comics. In order to really make things happen, you have to come out, step outside yourself for a bit. You have to fall. The exact words he used are, I had to fall out of love a bit in order to kind of love it again in a new way. That's kind of more or less what he said there. You should go check out the interview. He says it very quickly, and I botched it over the course of the last 30 seconds. Anyway, it's a really true statement, and I think it's true of all kinds of things. I mean, if you think about the music business, the entertainment business, certainly the arts, there is a trap for people who are too close to it. I mean, I think this is described in many different ways. Probably why I was botching what Sean said. It's I had to put some distance between myself and the whatever it is, the business. I had to separate myself from the day to day. There's a lot of little ways to describe this same kind of idea, but it's love and being completely attached to something is wonderful. It also gives you blinders. It will You'll lose the critical thinking. I hear that's a dog whistle now word. Critical thinking. That's it. Actually, this is an example of how Twitter has gone insane. Critical thinking is a dog whistle for terrible things. Apparently, somebody should let Wes know. But if you are too in love with things, you're too close to it. You lose the ability to be critical about what you need to do to succeed, about where maybe things aren't going as well. The blinders you put on yourself keep you from self-correcting at times. And I see this with comics plenty. You see this with a lot of retailers. They love comics. They just love them. So they open up a shop because they want to be surrounded by comics all the time. Maybe they know they're not, an artist. Maybe they never had the desire to create. It's interesting. There's a lot of people who start comic shops who do not really have the desire to create comics. They love to read them. They love to consume them. I kind of joked about it the other day, but there's the creator I've known, not creator, sorry, the retailer, the person who opens up a comic shop, who one of their prime motivations for doing it is so they could read the comics, days before others, because they'd be able to sit there at night. I know a lot of retailers who do that. They get the comics and they sit down at like 8 o'clock at night and they read through things a couple days before they go out to the shelf, and it's really cool. That's great. But in order to succeed as a business, you also have to have some business skills. You have to be able to look at things and say, I love Fantastic Four of a comic. I've always loved it. It's always been my favorite comic. I'm not going to order more copies of Fantastic Four than anything else simply because I like it, because that would be bad business sense. That's a very simple example of you can't just be in it completely for your own love. You have to think about other things. You see this with I think a lot of creators who they have their indie project, they have their dream, and there will be lots of opportunities where maybe their pitch, maybe their story is just not great, and with a little bit of tweaking, it could be great. Maybe with a little bit of adjustment, rather than talk to 10% of the market, they could talk to 40% of the market with their property. But if you If you completely love comics, you tend to not ask yourself those questions. You tend to ignore those things. You have to step out of yourself as somebody who's trying to be in business. I made this comment, I don't know, or a video a bit ago about, do you have to was it you should still be in it for the money, basically, was kind of my premise. And that got some people angry. Like, I got some very heated responses around, hey, money isn't everything. No, of course it's not everything. It's just one way to validate what you're doing. If you're really passionate about a particular project, but you're making no money, it's an indicator of, hey, maybe what you're making isn't appealing to many people. Maybe your market, your audience is very small. And now you have a choice to make. Maybe that's okay because this is a passion project, and whether you make money or don't make money, whether you sell to one person or 10,000 people, it doesn't really matter to you. That's okay, as long as you make those decisions thoughtfully and not accidentally. And I think that's where, thinking more about kind of that conversation with Sean and that word, it's a skill that I wish more people had. There's an interview that's going up, or it probably, hopefully, is already up by the time you hear this, with Glenn Greenberg. And it's an amazing interview because he talks about the world of comics, and particularly working as an editor in Marvel in the 90s. And he also wrote things and other stuff. But one of the things he mentioned, and I've heard this story before, and it's public knowledge, is that at the time, Mark Grunwald would host like a weekly class or a weekly session with the other editors, kind of teaching them about the business. And I've seen some of the and the transcripts is the wrong word, but these classes have been talked about before. These moments, these meetings, and in a lot of cases, one of the throughput lessons was, you've got to look critically at your book. You've got to be thoughtful about your audience. You cannot just be in love with the property. I think Grunwald was an example of an amazing human being, by the way, who just had a lot of mentorship and had a lot of, I mean, he cared about his business, clearly very deeply, but he had the ability to look at the business still as a business. It wasn't just about being in love with comics. It was about, the best way to be in love with comics is to make sure that comics continue. The best way to live your passion is to make sure that your passion doesn't get interrupted with bankruptcy or, inability to actually get it anywhere. That's part of the game. It's a very hard art to learn. I think in many ways, in more recent months, you've seen, I think, was it CB Cebulski? No, it's Tom Brevoort, I think, talked about you don't put people who love a particular title or a particular character on that title. And I think in a weird kind of way, I think that's a flawed argument. But I think the root of some of that is this idea of, if you have a writer who loves the Hulk and it's just been their favorite character for the entire duration of their life is the Hulk, then you need to think carefully about putting that person on Hulk, because while that passion is great, is that person going to be able to be critical about their own work? Is that person going to be able to push themselves to write the very best story they can write? Or are they going to be blinded by their own love? Do they need to fall out of love with the character a bit in order to write them in the best way possible? I think there's some truth to that. Again, I think that kind of standard is clumsy, and like a lot of things that I think Tom Brevoort says these days, I think there's some wisdom in there that gets mangled in the delivery, and that's kind of a shame. I have a feeling, this is going to go dark for a second, but I have a feeling like long after Tom Brevoort is gone, he's going to be one of those people that they're like, a lot of the value he produced is going to be kind of hidden and forgotten because it was obscured by other things. I don't know. That's sad to me. Now bum myself out. I don't know. The idea of just, you have to be able to be thoughtful and critical about your work, and you can't let love blind what you do. It's a big deal. I've got something caught in my throat all of a sudden, so I'm going to subject everybody to a massive coughing fit if I'm not careful. That's what's going on. Anyway, let me know what you think about all this. Do you think, what's that balance between love and putting out something and being able to kind of have that balance in your own mind? What is it that you think of all this? Leave a comment below. If you want to get in touch with me, here it comes. You can see all my contact information in the description of this video. all very good. Like and subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Before I horrify everybody by dying in the car, I will say goodbye to you. So thank you for listening.